Hello everybody, it's Sephiroth204, and I honestly can't believe it's been 5 years. 5 years ago from last Thursday, April 19th, I got spinal surgery. We'll get into the Dovey timeline. It's a bit less exciting than the Zelda timeline, but 5 years ago last Thursday, I got portions of my spine removed and a tumor carved out of the inside of my spine that was pushing up against my spinal cord and threatening to paralyze me from the waist down. And since then, for the past 5 years, I've been fighting and winning and losing, but mostly winning, in a battle against neuroblastoma, stage 4 neuroblastoma. But let's if you watched last year's video, it's going to be mostly repeating, but I just like to go through the process just to, I guess, remind myself just how far I've come here. I have a list that I keep updating year on year. So to go back to the start of the stories, to go a little bit further, starting in 2011, I'm sorry, 7 years ago, guys. 2011, in my first year of college, I started getting these crazy migraines. It was headaches like you wouldn't believe, and nothing would stop them. Eventually, it tanked my second semester, and I finished it. It tanked it, but I finished it, and I took the next 2 semesters off just trying to figure out what was going on. We went to neurologists, we went to people, no rhyme or reason why this pain was happening. Then it went away. It just stopped after a year. So it was pretty nice in 2012. The summer 2012, I was actually able to get back to doing stuff, doing work and things. And but as the summer went on, I started getting back pain, but I was doing a lot of outside work. We have a farm over here, so I was doing gardening. I was cleaning out all the animal pens and cages and stuff. I was like the main caretaker. But my back started killing me. And it slowly started getting worse and worse. I went back to college, fall 2012, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Finally, in January 2013, we started looking at getting X-rays and stuff. Didn't have any herniated discs or anything. Finally got an MRI in March, and it showed that there was a tumor growing out of one of my vertebrae into the spinal cord. And your vertebra is kind of like this. If you're looking from like the top of the person down, you have like the spinal vertebra, and then the lamina, which is what you can feel on your back, the little like spines. So the lamina kind of like goes like this, and this is the part that sticks out of your back. And in between that hole is where your spinal cord goes. A bunch of strands of spaghetti that get very angry if you so much as brush up against them. So with that, in the main thing here, I had a tumor growing that burst itself out of the spine like that, and it was pushing the spinal cord up against the outside, and it was very painful. I had a doctor when we'll get to that, I guess. So we decided that the best course and only course of action was surgery, which I got in April. As I said, April 19th, 2013. I got spinal surgery. I got a few of the lamina removed. I got at least one of the lamina. I think I got 3 of them removed. And the tumor was excised from the inner spinal bone, inner spine, and I had a fusion of the vertebra around it. So the spinal vertebra got rid of the discs in between them, fused them together, got rods and screws in my back to hold everything in place, which caused me a daily amount of pain now. but it's better than being dead. And spend a few weeks, a month recovering from that while they sent the tumor out for testing. When we first, got it looked at. Oh, when we first got it looked at, we thought it may be a sarcoma or something, just like a minor cancer. Emphasis on the minor. Any cancer is not minor, but compared to other cancers, I thought it would be a minor one. Unfortunately, it showed that it was not a sarcoma, which is pretty easily treatable. It showed that it was a cancer called neuroblastoma. We thought it was originally ganglioneuroblastoma, which is like a lighter version of that, but no, full-on neuroblastoma, which is a cancer usually only seen in children, between 1 and 10. Me being 2013, me being 22 at the time, I was one of 5 patients in the world that had stage 4 neuroblastoma. By the way, I got a scan, and it showed that it was not only in the spine. The spine was actually not the primary site. It was actually around one of my adrenal glands, and also in a huge part of my hip, coming out of the bone in the iliac crest of my hip. And the reason why we caught it was because when it metastasized to the spine, that's when it started causing problems. But looking back, when it started, the primary site was where it started was around the adrenal glands, where neuroblastoma usually starts. And looking back at that makes a lot of sense, because if it started attacking the adrenal glands, that would have sent my adrenal functions crazy. Setting adrenaline up. During 2011, when I had the headaches, my blood pressure was through the roof. Always. And that's definitely what was causing those headaches. It stopped because my body calcified the entire tumor and adrenal gland. It just covered it over and tried to suffocate it. Unfortunately, it still spread, but once that was covered over, there was nothing coming out of that adrenal gland anymore. It was essentially just dead there. So the adrenaline stopped, and that's why the headache stopped. Unfortunately, it metastasized, which is why I started getting the back pain. So, the doctor said that based on how the surgeon that took care of everything said that based on how I just was with how the tumor was pushing up against my spinal cord, he wasn't entirely sure how I was walking. And I'll tell you, that was some of the most intense pain I've ever felt in my life. But, I just thought it was back pain or something. I was also on a regular, very heavy dose of pain medication. I think it was on Percocet, oxycodone. So, I was like seeing a pain specialist who just gave me really heavy pain meds. And I just worked through it. I wasn't zonked out or anything, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I guess. I was able to try to finish. I tried to salvage what left of that semester of college. I completed half the courses. Had some of my best work. But starting in May, starting in May, not June. I said in the weekly update June, but May. Starting in May, as soon as I recovered from the spinal surgery, I started getting chemo. I started getting treatments at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which was actually right next to where I got the surgery, at the hospital at University of Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, Hospital University of Pennsylvania. But the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP for short, as it's called, was where the world specialist on neuroblastoma is. He's currently still my doctor. And so very lucky for us that it was within an hour's drive of our house. So we started chemo. We started the regular chemo regimen that went for patients of neuroblastoma. Again, I had to get a ton more, though, because the way the chemo works generally, it's by volume, person's volume by weight. Kids are very light. so they get a lighter dose. And also, kids are really able to bounce back from chemo. You have to give kids credit. Like, these poor kids that are suffering from cancer, they bounce back from adversity really well. I see some of these kids, like, with like machines still pumping stuff into them, just running around all over the place. Me, I'm stuck in bed going, I don't know how the kids do it. But yeah, so I had to get like the max dosage allowed, and even that wasn't necessarily enough because I was a big, heavy person. I still am a big, heavy person. Although over the course of the next bunch of months, I lost about 80 pounds and slowly made most of it back in the ensuing years. But so I started getting heavy chemo, and it was a week of really heavy, disgusting chemo where I was stuck in the hospital, and then 3 weeks or so of waiting for it to kill my blood and to make me sick and all the other horrible side effects. My hair, came right out, and just waiting to see if, because my blood tanked, I became completely immunosuppressed. So even if I would get the slightest fever, I would be rushed into the hospital for antibiotics and be there for another week. And that's what my summer was. 4 rounds of this, and each one was progressively worse. After the first round, I couldn't even eat anymore in general. It completely destroyed my taste buds and made me sick, like, of even looking at food. So they started prescribing medications to try to figure out how to get me to start eating again. We finally settled on one called Remeron, which is an antidepressant, but it also has an amazing effect on appetite. And I started eating ravenously. That's where the weight started coming back. Even then, I couldn't eat when I was getting the actual chemo because it makes you so sick. But so I was like going between like, binge eating and not eating for weeks. And that's what my summer was until the end of August, where we had gotten, I had a scan in between that showed that the tumors started shrinking, which was nice. But at the end of October, after the 4th round, which almost killed me, just because of how bad it was, we took another scan and it showed that everything started growing again. So some people just respond well to that hard, heavy chemo. I didn't. It wasn't working. So we decided to take a different approach and go towards weaker, slower, long-term chemo. We went from the usual method to what would be the first of very many clinical trials and tests. And I started writing my own. I started writing the book on alternative neuroblastoma therapy, and I still am. So we started a trial drug called Millennium, along with oral and IV chemos. And at this point, when I first got the heavy chemo in May, I got installed something called a Broviac, which is an IV that is installed into an aorta, your aorta, or one of the major veins, with a tube coming out of your chest, and it's covered up by a dressing, and that had to get changed every week. And my God, was that annoying. For several years I had that, like 3 out of the 5 years. So, or something like that. I have it somewhere around here. So I had that line, but it was easy because they didn't have to make like a actual IV every time they had to inject me with something, which was often. So that was at least convenient. The problem was that like if I got like any sort of fever, I'd immediately had to go in because there was a risk of that line getting infected. And if the central line got infected, it would have to be replaced, which thank God never happened to me, because that would require surgery again. Or B, the infection would get into your blood, which is why it had to be replaced in the first place. The infection would get into your blood, and blood infections are very fatal. So don't get blood infections. Luckily, neither of those happened, although there were a lot of times over the past bunch of years that I had to go in because I got even a small fever, and I had to wait a week being pumped with antibiotics, and it was disgusting. So I started getting this Millennium and other stuff, and I had to keep going into the hospital every third week, 5 days in a row. But instead of being admitted, I would go to their day hospital. It was a day clinic. And I would sit there while they gave me the oral meds and pumped me with the IV, and I would feel really terrible. And that was my life. My life was a 3-week cycle of general stability. The scans never showed that the cancer was lessening, but it never showed the cancer growing, so we kept on with it for months throughout 2014. This was August 2013, so this lasted from August 2013 to February 2015. So a year and 4 or 5 months, which was a long time of just living in the 3-week cycle, going in 5 days of that, 2 weeks to rest, making sure that my blood count stayed normal, getting constant blood tests 2 times a week every week, getting the dressing changed, and just being tethered to the hospital. We did go away to vacation once or twice. Went down to Disney World. It was thankfully paid for us. And that was it. The scans never showed anything new, and it never showed anything less or more. It was just limbo. Then in February of 2015, everything changed. The Fire Nation attacked. So around the time that Kirby-thon happened, the Kirby-thon. If you don't know what the Kirby-thon is, good. I went into the hospital because I got a huge infection of something. I got some sort of bacterial something or another that destroyed my intestines. I don't want to go into what happened or what it was like, but I was in the hospital for a month. Like, instead of just a week or a week and a half, I was in the hospital for a month straight. They were trying to figure out what was going on. They never really pinpointed what exactly I had, but it was some sort of intestinal bacterial infection or something, where essentially the only thing that they were able to do to stop me from expelling my insides was to give me a medication, Octa something, that literally shut off my intestines. Like, it was crazy. It literally shut off my intestines. It just completely stopped everything. So I just stopped going to the bathroom entirely, and then slowly easing off of it so that I would my body would try to get itself back into a normal rhythm. It was a bad experience. But why that was game-changing, aside from being a terrible experience in and of itself, was because one of the side effects of chemo, and one of the side effects especially of the Millennium, was that it messed with your intestines like that. It made you more prone to things like that happening. I was on a constant antibiotic that tried to prevent the flora or whatever in my intestines from dying, so that they would die, but prevent the bad stuff from growing in its place, so that I would stop having this. Because when I got the earlier chemos, or when I first started getting the Millennium, I spent 90% of the time in the bathroom, because it just made my intestines, it was like a faucet, turned it on, and that was that. It was horrible. It was really horrible, and that was my constant thing. When I was on the Millennium week, I would just have to stick around the bathroom regardless. So we determined that at this point, it was not safe anymore to continue this because it was a risk of that happening again, this hospital stay and this infection. Excuse me. Let me take some Tums, because talking this much gives me a lot of acid, especially about this topic. Tums were the only antacid that ever worked for me. Also, over the years, I've gone through hundreds of these bottles, I have to tell you. It's the only thing that stopped the acid from the chemo. So, Tums, if you want to sponsor me, I can sing your praises to the moon and back. But, so we stopped the Millennium. And we changed it up. So the chemos that I was getting in the hospital, we changed the IV. It was a chemo called irinotecan. So we changed that to an oral version, which, oh my God, was the most disgusting thing. I had to mix it in with cranberry juice in order to mask the taste. I'm not going to talk about that anymore because even saying the word cranberry juice makes me nauseous now. And last year you guys saw that too, and I talked about it. I can't stand it anymore. Suffice to say, it is the word that we cannot bear to hear. It completely ruined that drink for me, or any flavoring of that thing. I'm getting sick just talking about it, but suffice to say, I had to drink that 5 times a week instead of getting it put in my IV 5 times a week. But I was able to do that at home. I had to do it myself. Still taking the oral meds, and instead of the Millennium, I was taking gene-targeted medications, rapamycin rapamycin, until we found out that I was having a reaction to that, so we replaced it with one called dasatinib and another one called everolimus, which I don't remember what their regular function was, but they also were to target we were doing it to target the genes that my cancer had, my tumors had, so trying to target that more and have less of focus on all-encompassing chemo. So that was just a fun. That was a fun time. In March is when I started reacting really badly to the rapamycin, so we had to change it up. And in April of 2015, my hair finally started growing back in after 2 years of not having hair. And my hair stayed in until March of last year, which we'll get to. So for the rest of that year, for the rest of 2015, I was on this irinotecan week, and then the rapamycin, the everolimus and dasatinib just taken orally the rest of the time as well. And it was, again, 1 week of the irinotecan, 3 weeks off, and my God, I hated it, but it was better than having to schlep into the hospital every day for 5 days. And I was getting my hair back, and that was like a big thing for me because I'm a very vain person. I really enjoy my hair. As you can see, it's really thin right now, but it's kind of growing back, thickening up over there. But I had beautiful, luscious hair. I had such nice eyebrows. If you see some old pictures of me that I post every so often, I had really thick, dark hair. It was nice, and it went all the way down. Right now it's kind of long because it's been growing for a little over a year, but I had it all the way down to here. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Anyway, unfortunately, when it started growing back in, it was never the same, which that's just what you gotta do. I have, like here, it's just the camera's mirrored, so it's hard to say, but you could see it's kind of like eating all the way back here. I still have my widow's peak, but it's just thin at the very top and very thick at the back now. But it's just how it's going to be. Also, my eyebrows are thinner, and that's sad because I had really dark eyebrows. Yes, my hair started growing back, and that's how it went for the rest of 2015. At the beginning of 2016, when it was determined that I probably wouldn't be needing any sort of the purpose of the Broviac port anymore, which again, every week I had to get that stupid thing changed. The dressing on it, and it was a dressing that took up like this much of my body because it was a line. Where was it? Yeah, the line was over here, coming out over here. There's still a scar there, it's actually like a belly button because it was in there for several years and it was like a tube coming out. So there was a line over here, and then it was about. I don't remember if I kept one that we cut because we had to fix something later. In between in this year in 2015, it started wearing out after 2 years. So we had to just cut it out, cut it and glue a new end on. But it was like a tube came out, and then the tube was about that, the line was about that long. And then it branched into 2 ends, and those 2 ends could be hooked up to machines or taken blood out. I didn't need to get poked for a blood test, so at least that was something. But it was a hassle. So we decided to have it replaced with an under-the-skin port. Instead of a Broviac line, it was called a port. And that was over here. You could see the scar still. So what it was like a little cup, like a little thin cup with, again, a line coming out of it that was inserted under my skin, and the line was put into the vein. And every time the doctors wanted to inject something or take something out, they just lined up like these like little parts of it and stuck a long needle in, a special needle for this. It was like an inch long needle, stuck it in. And it would go into the little cup, and that would access the vein, and it would just be easier for them to do stuff. So, so I had that put in. I had to put numbing cream on beforehand and stuff. So you can see I tanned yesterday. I was out in the sun all day. It was great. Sorry. This actually shows up on camera. It's kind of funny. Again, vanity. We talked about this. So I had the port put in, and let's see. I don't know why I said off millennium there. So I had the port put in, and everything continued until May of that year, 2016. So May 2 years ago now. This was the 3rd year of my treatment, and we decided to stop the Virilemus and everything else, pretty much, the irinotecan and all that stuff, because I was just not doing well on it. It was making me sick. It was making me depressed. It was just not going well. And we made up that we would get a scan at the end of the summer, and we would determine from there, because it looks like things are going pretty well. So I had a pretty good summer, 2016, more or less anyway, and we got a scan in the beginning of August, or the end of August, and it wasn't good. It showed that possibly things started growing back, which sucked, because I stopped the medication I was on because I've been stable for 2 years at that point. Just nothing was changing, and everything looked like it was, slowly getting better using PET scans that we were getting now instead of just the other scans that they were doing. The PET scans were showing that things were lightening, and the scan that we got in August 2016 showed that everything was a little bit brighter then. It was more activity in several areas. So we decided to go to the next big option, which was radiation therapy. The reason why I hadn't gotten radiation therapy earlier is because it's not really good on initial chemo. It's very good at getting rid of like it depends, I guess. It depends on the chemo, but this types of radiation that I was getting was like the kind that is like the finishing move type of thing, or at least used non-initially. And the other problem is that because radiation builds in the body, you can only use it so many times before like you have to stop forever. Otherwise, there's a risk of permanent damage to the body or causing other kinds of cancer, because radiation can cause cancer. So we decided to go with it though. So I got around to radiation in September 2016, and it was interesting. I had to be in a room where everything, a special room with the walls and the door were lead lined, so that the radiation doesn't seep out to other patients. Everything in the room was covered in a plastic that would be thrown out afterwards. My bed was covered. I had to cover my phone and my tablet with like several layers of bags, just so that, because anything I touched would be contaminated. I had to wear hospital scrubs or garbage clothing that would be thrown out, I think incinerated or something. All of my waste would go to a special sewage tank that would not be in the water supply. It was like a whole thing. And I spent a week getting radiation pumped into me. Oh, I spent a day getting radiation pumped into me, and then a week waiting for it to dissipate enough that I could safely leave. And like they would come in like in hazmat suits with like a Geiger counter. Geiger counter? Yeah, Geiger. That's not... No, yeah, Geiger counter. I was trying to think. Is that the one for earthquakes? No, it's a Richter scale, Dovey. They came with a little Geiger counter to measure how much radiation I had at like close distance at a few feet away. So like, you know, after 5 or so days, since again I was a big person, I had to get a lot of radiation. So like some kids, the radiation, you know, they pee it out or sweat it out in like a day or two. It took me 5 days because I'm a big person. And like during the course of that time, they would also just flush you with water. So you would keep going to the bathroom and keep peeing out the radiation. Because your kidneys and stuff are doing a very good job of filtering things. They're the body's filters, and they do that. And the only person I was able to have any sort of contact with was my dad, who was in the room with me, on the other side of the room, behind a lead shield. And every time he had to like give me any food or anything, he had to put on like a gown and gloves and socks and, you know, just like, you know, hand everything over at a distance. And the doctors pretty much stayed out of the room except for like once or twice, and everyone had to wear radiation badges, and it's a whole procedure. So yeah, afterwards, also one of the side effects of radiation is that it kills your blood. Luckily, I bounced back pretty quickly after the first round, so I got another one in November. And that round was terrible because at the same time I was also getting... I was in the middle of like a horrible toothache from a tooth that needed to get a root canal, and it was like all the way up. It was my everything hurt, so I had to be on severe pain meds. The problem is that things like Percocet make you really sick on an empty stomach, and you can't really eat when you're on radiation because it makes you sick. So I spent the second round of radiation horribly nauseous and ill, and it was terrible. And so I went into December just waiting and recovering, seeing what my blood would do, and my blood just went... The immunity was okay, but what radiation does, unlike chemo, radiation doesn't necessarily go after your platelets, or your white blood cells anyway. It goes after the red blood cells and the marrow. And so my red blood cells just started steadily declining, to the point where I had to get bi-weekly blood transfusions 2 times a week, Monday and Thursday. That's how bad it was. My blood was dying so fast that it couldn't even replace itself It couldn't even keep for 3 days. So that was happening, and then at the beginning of January, I went to MagFest. I almost died there. We've talked about this several times already, but 2017, January 2017, first MagFest I stayed for more than a day. I was there for the weekend. I almost died because my blood bottomed out. I went into shock at one point. I should have been in the hospital, but I didn't. And I almost killed myself walking around because I could hardly breathe. My blood was at like an all-time low amount of red cells, so I wasn't getting oxygen to my body. I can laugh about it now, but it was bad. And so afterward, I had to get several blood transfusions and also a stem cell transfusion. Before they did the initial round of chemo in 2013, they harvested stem cells from my body. Or actually, maybe after the first round of chemo. Between one of the rounds, maybe. Yeah, before the fourth round. That's what it was. Before the fourth round, which was a different type. They did stem cell harvesting, where they hooked me up to... You can see the dot over here. They hooked me up to a machine. They stuck a IV in my neck. And I have that one somewhere around here. 1 second. Do I keep it in this closet? It used to be within arm's reach, but yeah, it was a really, really big IV. If you've seen how big IVs are, imagine one that's like thicker, bigger. It was horrible. But so that was in my neck like that, and then they hooked that up so that they could cycle the blood out of my body into a machine that pulled out stem cells, which they can do now. And stored it in these bags and then froze it for several years until I needed it. And I needed it because my bone marrow was dying. Also, the cancer was in my bone marrow. That was another fun thing. So my bone marrow was just dying. It wasn't producing blood anymore. So they had to give me new stem cells so that my body would grow itself back. And thankfully it worked, and we decided not to go for a third round of radiation because that would kill me. We didn't expect the second round to do that, so that was great. We decided to go from that point to, in February, trying immunotherapy, which immunotherapy causes your body to attack the cancer itself. So I went into the immunotherapy, and it was even worse than the radiation. My body decided it didn't like itself. It couldn't care less about the cancer, but I got so many different reactions from it. We're not sure what it was exactly. I had to start taking a nerve blocker beforehand because immunotherapy, one of its side effects is that it attacks nerves. So it's really painful, like excruciatingly painful, because when your nerves are attacked, they like nerves are your pain centers. So imagine all the pain centers in your body suddenly being attacked. All of the nerves, all of them. So I had to start taking a nerve blocker that would dull my nerve input. Unfortunately, I didn't have it built up enough in time, and also I was having reactions to the medication itself. So I was just like curled for the days that I was getting the immunotherapy. I was just curled into the fetal position, and also for a while afterward. And I started getting rashes, horrible rashes all over my body. My blood started bottoming out again. I was slowly starting to get organ failure in several key places. I lost the ability to eat and drink, and this is all like within the span of a week. So the rashes and immense pain everywhere, and I couldn't move or do anything. I started getting fevers like you wouldn't believe. It went way too high. and like all these other ancillary problems that were, I became sensitive to cold in any shape or form. I had to have a space heater put in my room because any temperature above like, I don't know, 70 or 80 was too cold for me. I couldn't breathe because I could feel the air going down into my lungs, and that was too cold. So I usually had to have a blanket over my face so that it filtered out the air so it was still a bit warmer. I couldn't, any water less than scalding froze me like frostbite levels. I had to bundle myself up. Like, it was terrible. It all my nerves just completely went haywire in every single way possible. So we decided not to get more immunotherapy. And I spent a month and a half recovering, and I literally almost died. It actually got to the point where I just said to myself, this is it. I started planning out my will, unbeknownst to anyone around me, and it was terrible. Like, I really thought that I was about to die. And I didn't feel that way when I first got the diagnosis or through the chemo. I just wanted to die. I didn't feel like I was going to die outside of my own hand. I didn't even think I was going to die with the blood bottoming out that January, because I just didn't know what the hell was going on. But here, that was it. My number was up on that. So somehow I didn't die, but I did spend a lot of time in the hospital afterward. Just getting, fluid transfusions and things, because I was literally not able to do anything. And I spent the next couple of months recovering until April, where, or at the end of March anyways, March 30th, where we went, after I was recovered, we went to the doctor and I said, okay, so what's next now? Because, we can't sit here and wait for things. He said, you know what, with the scans and everything, I think it's safe that we could try to do surgery, to try to remove the primary tumor around your adrenal gland, and which was about that big, by the way, and whatever it is on your hip that we can get out, because, we're not going into the bone, but we can take as much off the outside as possible. So we went to the surgeon, and we said to him, so when can you do it? And he's like, I'm free on Thursday. This was on Monday. He's like, I'm free on Thursday. And we're just like, so between that time, I was about to start up Golden Sun, so I was recording furiously. So I had 3 days to prepare for abdominal surgery. And I got the surgery, and it was successful, and they got the primary tumor out without any problem, and they did as much as they could on the hip. And after that, I relaxed, and I'm going to show it to you guys because it's there. Sorry if you guys don't want to see some fat guy's stomach, but I want to just show you the scars because I haven't. If you don't want to see it, it's too much information. I'll tell you when you can look back. I know I already showed you this stuff, but I do have a fat, disgusting stomach, and I'm going to apologize in advance that I do. But, let's... Anyway, again, look away if you don't want to see some fat kid's stomach. But, the scars here, as you can see, it's slightly faded, but that was the scar to get to the adrenal gland, where they had to cut through the muscle. It was really tough trying to recover from that, because the back surgery, what they did is that they went right into the center of the back, so they just had to push the muscles aside. They didn't have to cut through the muscle, because your muscle just goes along the sides of the spine. So they just had to push it aside, and it was really painful having it work again. But here, they had to cut a line through everything here, and that is almost a foot, maybe, I don't know, and go in there, reach all the way into the back and pull it out and staple everything shut, and that was really great. And for the hip over here, Again, I'm sorry I'm fat and disgusting. They had to go into... they had to go diagonal. And again, cut through a whole bunch of muscle and try to worm their way down into the hip. As you can see, it did not heal as well as the one on the side here, but fun scars. I also have a line down my back. I would show. I can't really show you. See, you can't really see, but you can see there's like an indent over there in my spine. The skin is in there because there's nothing pushing it. That wasn't my butt. That was my back. There's just an indent because there's no bone there pushing out the skin. Okay, you can look back now, guys. I'm not undressed anymore. I'm sorry, but it was a tough recovery. But I did, and we got a scan that last May, now, 2017, and it said that the scan didn't show anything anymore because they took out the only thing that was showing up on the scans was the area of the tumor, which was, again, fully taken out, 100%, the primary tumor, and the hip, which they got out as much as possible. So the scan didn't show anything. And he said to me, if I didn't know that you had cancer, I would say that this is just a normal scan. So, he said, we know it's there, and with neuroblastoma, you can never really stop. So it's not textbook remission, but it's about as close as you're gonna get. And we were able to spend the summer, most of the summer, just enjoying that. Just recovering a little, and in July, I started up a medication called fenretinide, which was along with another one called ketoconazole, and the two of those, fenretinide was this powder I had to take that gave me such horrible gastrointestinal problems also, constant gas and everything. We'll get to that, but the purpose of that was we were in the phase of cancer therapy that was to kill the stragglers and prevent anything from growing back. Like we were in the end phase. The unfortunate thing with the fenretinide is that it did three things. It had gastrointestinal problems up the wazoo, literally. It made me sensitive to sunlight, so I essentially had to become a vampire. And no joke, even the littlest bit of sunlight, I would get a burn. It was ridiculous. And that also translated into making my skin, it made my skin sensitive. So it was sensitive to sunlight, and it was sensitive to any sort of touch. So if I were to walk, my feet would blister up, even just a little bit of walking. I found that out after the first round of fenretinide, and I went to the city with Juker and Lonely Days. We walked around for 8 miles, and the bottoms of my feet came off. And also 2 of my toenails came off. It's actually almost fully grown back. I'm not going to show you the actual toe, but the big toe here, the entire nail, poof, that's it, done. Came off because the area under it swelled up, blistered up. So I would say the nail is 3/4 of the way back at this point after almost a year. So that's pretty good. The other nail is the second toe on my right foot is pretty much done. It's pretty much back because it's a smaller nail. But yeah, that was a lesson learned in not moving around when I had fenretinide. And the other problem was so that was the skin sensitivity. And problem 3 was it got rid of, I guess, part of the sensitivity to light. It got rid of my night vision because the fenretinide was in the vitamin A family, and because of that, it essentially replaced the vitamin A that my body was getting. And vitamin A it works in your eyes, so it was replacing the eye's food source in a way. whenever I took it, and it was a large quantity I had to take. So during the daytime, everything I saw was like through a yellow filter, like a really thick yellow filter. I just had tunnel vision. And at night I couldn't see. If it was even moderately dark, I was blind, like literally blind. It was absolutely horrifying experience for me. I didn't almost die. It was just a horrifying experience having to live for several months taking that stuff. And I would, again, take it for a week and then wait a few weeks for the effects to dissipate and then take it for another week. Excuse me. So that was in July, and we got another scan in September where it confirmed that it was the one that we got in May was not a fluke. I was in remission, and we were really happy. So the winter went on with taking the fenretinide and being miserable, especially since, like, as the winter was going, it was more dark than light out, so I was more blind than not. In December, we decided to also remove the port, which is why there's, again, just the scar over here. There we go. Just the scar over there. Because I wasn't getting anything injected anymore. And I could just get blood tests for my arm. So we got the port out, which was like the first actual real freedom that I had. When I had the Broviac in, the one that needed the dressing, I couldn't shower because if that gets wet, it has to be changed. It was that kind of thing. So I couldn't shower. I could just wash myself off. I had these special cloths to wash myself off for 2 years. When the port was put in, it was under the skin, so I could finally start showering again. I could swim. It was so good. Like, I couldn't do that for 2 years. I love swimming. I love showering. I couldn't do that. And I was able to do that again. But once I got the port out, it got rid of the last vestige of things that could go catastrophically wrong with my body in terms of... because it was harder to infect, but even then, if I were to get a fever, I would have to go into the hospital because even though it was under the skin, that could still get infected if I got an infection, and I would have infection in the bloodstream and I would die. So once that was out, I no longer had to worry about fevers. Like, you guys, you get a fever, you take Advil or something. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do anything because we had to watch that fever. And if it got over like 100.1, to the hospital for a week. It was very stressful. But that was out. I got it out in December, and since then, it's been so nice. I was free. There's no thing sticking out of my chest that I could feel anymore. No lumps there. When I run my hand there, it's just nothing. It's been nice. We also decided to stop the fenretinide around the end of the year because it was driving me crazy. So we went to a new set of medications that I'm currently on, actually, at the beginning of January, which are a medication called lovastatin, which targets, is normally a cholesterol medication, and chemos that I alternate. The chemos kind of are to help guide the lovastatin because it's like alternative chemo, alternative cancer fighting stuff just to get rid of the stragglers again. There's science behind it that I don't know. And so, like, I have 3 weeks of one chemo. I can take the lovastatin continuously. I'm 3 weeks of taking one chemo and then 3 weeks switching to another one and back and forth so that they don't lose their potency. They're all very low dose, so there's no side effects now. There were side effects when I started it. In January, I started taking it in the middle of MagFest. I got really sick. And it wasn't just, I got like the mag flu, and I was on top of starting a new medication with chemo, so I spent 2 weeks horrifically sick. And then I went to Florida, and like instantly better as soon as we got there. The air was perfect. It's just sunshine and rainbows and happiness. It was amazing. I was actually crying from how happy I was that it just immediately went away as soon as we got down there. So yeah, we continued that on, and so far so good. It's been so far so good. I'm going to be starting up another medication that's like a super version of ibuprofen. It's a pain reliever, but it's also used in cancer fighting, so that's going to hopefully start up soon. And in 2 weeks, next week, next week, the week that starts May, I'm going to be getting it's the end of April. I'm going to be getting more scans to see how everything is doing. So that's it for the 5 years. It's taking longer each year to say it. I wonder why. But yeah, 5 years, guys. That's been 5 years of fun and happy times in Dovey's life. I'm 27 now. 27 now. I got the first surgery when I was 22. And, it's been such a large chunk of my life at this point. I watched a lot of friends finishing college. I never finished college. Finishing college, dating, getting married, having kids, getting jobs. And I'm just sitting here with my YouTube because it's literally all I can do. I started drawing, which has been a great outlet for me. But, yeah. Last year we ended off before, last year when I recorded this in April, we ended off before I got any scans. I was still recovering from the surgery. So we didn't really know what was going on, but between then and now I can safely say I won. I'm in remission, and hopefully it's going to stay that way. My father pointed out, when they talk about cancer, they talk about 5-year survival rates. Once you reach that 5-year point in fighting cancer, there's usually a significant chance of you surviving, unless the cancer is still kicking you. But at this point, it's not. The main problems I have are either with the medication or side effects of my body being destroyed over the past 5 years. We're slowly trying to work on you spend so much time doing whatever you can to fight the cancer at any cost. Once you get to the end, it's not actually the end, because then you have to start working on fixing everything that you broke in the process. And a lot of that is psychological that I've been working on. I started seeing a therapist this year, and this past year since November, and it's helped so much. And again, I've said this before, I can't tell you how good of an idea it is if you're having a hard time to see somebody, to talk to somebody professional, because it helps so much, and it does not reflect badly on you in any way, shape, or form. I promise you. But yeah, so at this point, this coming years, it's the goal isn't necessarily to see if I'm in remission. The goal is to start fixing what we broke. So that's going to be interesting, and I look forward to seeing you guys next year and talking about all the fun stuff I get into over the course of this year. Hopefully not adding another 15 or 20 minutes of stories of woe to the story. So thank you all very much for watching. Thank you all very much for your support over these years. I've had so much support from all of you. And, I didn't mention this at the beginning, I got that MRI in 2013 in March, because I was complaining constantly about this unending pain. And you guys were like, Dovey, for the love of God, just get an MRI. It wasn't me that thought of it. It wasn't my parents, because we had seen other people that were completely wrong in everything that they decided. It was you guys. It was viewers like you who saved my life. And I will be forever grateful for that. So I thank you guys for doing that. I thank you guys for saving my life. I thank you guys for sticking with me and just watching me in the ups and downs and supporting me. And I thank you guys for being here now. Now that the drama is pretty much over and I'm a boring person again, I'm really happy that there's still people that care, because it's really easy to, like, when things are happening to send your stuff, but once that over, it gets really quiet, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But like, a lot of people are like, okay, my job is done, I'll see you later, Dovey. Glad you're better. So I thank you guys for being the ones that are still here. And here's to more good things in the future for everybody, for all of us. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.